Hi, Jared with VisibleTour.com, and today we are going to be doing an IBIS test between the R7 and the R6. I'm going to be having the 10 to 18 millimeter RFS on there. Unfortunately, it does not cooperate with the in-body stabilization, so you only get the optical image stabilization of that, which is only about 3.5 stops, whereas with the 15 to 35, which is on right now, you will get the full 7.5 stops of image stabilization, even possibly more, just because it is on a crop sensor and there's more movement that it could fix. And so I'm finding that this 15 millimeter equivalent to a 24 millimeter is actually pretty good. Yeah, so we're going to do a test on this as well and walk around. But first, I'm going to go into the R7, which is this camera, and do the 10 to 18, show you the image stabilization. Spoiler alert, it is not as good as the R6 with the 15 to 35 on, but when the 15 to 35 is on the R7 actually looks like it's probably better. So I'm really excited for the future, and hopefully there will be some ultra wide lenses that we could use that are EFS equivalent, making it lighter to put on the R7, and that would be amazing. So let's get to it. Right now I am on the R7 and we are doing the EFS 10 to 18 millimeters. It's a 4.5 to 5.6 designed for the EFS system. So it is adapted to the R7 RF mount. The IBIS is on. I am at the 10 millimeter, which is equivalent to 16 millimeters on a full frame. When I get onto the R6, it'll be my 15 to 35 at 15. To make it fair, both are going to be set at 4.5 for the f-stop. Right now ISO is 250, it's at 1/50th shutter. We are going to walk around the neighborhood in just a second. I'm going to do it in 24 frames per second, but I'm going to do a slow motion running test with both of these to see how it is with running really fast and see if that makes a difference. But I'm using a GorillaPod right now, holding it. I will tell you this is a lot lighter of a system. So right now it is the R7. Let's walk around the neighborhood. I will talk a little bit. This is kind of a little awkward. Do you guys go out in public and walk and with a camera in your face? So when I see somebody coming, I'm just gonna kind of walk off to the side and see if that, no confrontation. So I'm gonna up the ISO just a little bit right there to 400. And so still recording it one-handed right now with the GorillaPod. So looks like I'm a little blown out here. Not as much of an image test, but it can be, because we can see how the EFS lens is working compared to the RFL series, the 15 to 35, because this is not weather sealed at all. It is plasticky. It is super light though, and honestly I think this would be the best vlogging option. Get a little bit close. I'm shaking quite a bit. So the image stabilization and the autofocus obviously are on. If I were to turn it off, this is what it looks like. So image stabilization is off right now. We are at the 10 millimeter, which is equivalent to a 16 millimeter in a full frame. And so I'm going to turn on, and there it's on. See how that is. So we are at 60 frames per second, and I'm going to run, and I will do it as slow motion. So here we go. I'm out of shape. All right, let's go put on the R6. All right, so we are on the R6 right now with the 15 to 35 millimeter. The problem is this isn't the fairest test because unlike the R7 with an EFS adapted lens, although that lens has image stabilization, it does not use the in-body image stabilization with it as well. It only uses the optical. Whereas if you are with an RF lens, or in the future RFS lens, you will get dual IBIS. You'll get the optical and the image, the stabilization of the sensor as well working together, which on here it's 7.5 stops, I believe. And with just the 10 to 18, I think it's 3.5 stops. So this should be, although there might be some wobble, it should be better image stabilization than just the R7 with that ultra wide. So what I'm gonna do in just a little bit is I'm gonna switch out and put the 15 to 35 on the R7. Unfortunately, it won't be this wide. It'll be like a 24 millimeter equivalent, and we will do that. I'm gonna go down here and up the ISO a little bit. It's a little dark. And so this is a little bit heavier. Okay, so now we are 60 frames per second, 1/25th, and 4.5 for an f-stop still, and ISO is around 1250. It is getting a little bit darker out. And so I am going to actually bring that down, maybe do 1,000. So now I am 15 millimeters, 24 millimeter equivalent on a full frame. So you can actually vlog with a 24 millimeter frame-ish thing. So the 15 millimeter actually would work. It does make it a lot heavier. But now for your IBIS, it doesn't just show that you have image stabilization. It says image stabilization, and then there's a little plus sign next to it showing that it's using the lens and the in-body image stabilization. So one arm here and just walking. And no, I'm not gonna run again with this. I'm tired, I'm old. So we'll walk down here, same path I took the first time with this lens, and you're probably gonna notice a difference, and maybe there's wobble. It's hard for me to tell right now. I know that the R6 with this lens, the in-body stabilization, does have wobble. This one doesn't look bad actually. So I'm thinking that when Canon gets the RFS lineup out and they have image stabilization, which they do on I would call them non-professional RF lenses, I would say when they get higher quality RFS out there, that the image stabilization and the IBIS is going to be awesome together. Unfortunately, unless they do some kind of fix, the 10 to 18 doesn't work well with it. And I noticed that too, that it doesn't correct the profile either. I'm just changing the ISO. It will correct chromatic aberration, and it will recognize the lens. But in the settings, it said it would not fix any kind of distortion fix on there. So that's something to be aware of. If you haven't checked it out already, I did a live live stream through this camera. It is interesting. I'm gonna have to try out some more and see how that goes. It was a little choppy. I actually was not expecting to go live, so then I had to go and get a thumbnail put up right afterwards so you guys actually know what the video is. But that was kind of cool. So here, we'll have the sun in the background here. So if you find this content helpful, check out the previous video if you haven't already, and that was on autofocus. Also, my next video is probably going to start looking at dynamic range in S-Log, and I only use S-Log 3. That is the most dynamic range, so we'll be using that one. Right now it's just a standard profile. I'm not using any kind of log. And then we will approach photos, comparing the photos with the R6 and looking at noise and the shadows and stuff like that. Sorry, I'm just playing with the ISO. Maybe I should have put it on auto. And I think comparing this with the R6 will give me a better idea of what I think of this camera, which so far so good. And I will have a final review, kind of breaking down everything about the R7, what I think about it, and would I recommend it, and the cameras to compare, and would it make more sense to get this over the R6 or even the R5? And guess what? There's an R7C coming out next year. That should be interesting. That sounds exciting. So you get used to this R7, and the R7C will probably rock. So if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe. Let's get to it. Have a good day.